The 72-hour test. Could America survive alone? If the United States were cut off from the world tonight, how long would normal life continue? Not in theory, not in headlines. In real, practical terms. 72 hours. 3 days without global trade. No incoming cargo ships. No international flights carrying freight. No new imports clearing ports. Financial markets still open, but global flows frozen. Would America continue functioning, or would the system begin to strain? To understand that, we need to separate myth from infrastructure. The United States is often described as energy independent, agriculturally rich, and economically dominant. All of that is broadly true. The U.S. is one of the largest oil and gas producers in the world. It exports food. It has deep capital markets and the world's primary reserve currency. On the surface, it appears resilient. But modern economies do not run on surface indicators. They run on supply chains, timing, specialization, and coordination. So let's walk through the first 72 hours. Hours 0 to 12. Global trade halts. Container vessels already at sea continue moving, but no new shipments depart foreign ports. Air cargo contracts are suspended. International payment settlements slow dramatically as counterparties reassess exposure. Financial markets react first. Equity futures drop on uncertainty. Oil prices spike briefly on fear of dislocation. The dollar strengthens as investors seek liquidity. Inside the United States, nothing visibly changes yet. Power grids remain stable. Refineries continue operating. Supermarkets remain stocked. Gas stations are open. Most Americans would not notice anything unusual on the first morning. That's because the U.S. economy carries buffers. Warehouses hold inventory. Energy production is domestic heavy. Food supply chains are largely internal, but those buffers are not infinite. Hour 12 to 24. Logistics firms begin reviewing inventory exposure. Major retailers assess how much imported stock sits in distribution centers. Many consumer goods, electronics, appliances, pharmaceuticals, auto components, depend on foreign manufacturing at some stage. American agriculture can feed the country, but agricultural production itself depends on imported inputs, fertilizer components, specialized machinery parts, and certain crop chemicals. Manufacturing is where strain begins to show. Automobile production relies on globally distributed components. Semiconductor fabrication capacity inside the United States is growing, but much advanced chip production still occurs abroad. Even domestically assembled vehicles depend on parts crossing borders multiple times. Factories do not shut down immediately, but procurement officers begin calculating timelines. Airlines feel it quickly. While domestic flights continue, international routes are suspended. Air cargo volumes collapse. That affects time-sensitive goods like medical supplies and high-value electronics. Energy markets stabilize somewhat. The U.S. produces significant oil and gas domestically. However, refinery configurations are optimized for specific crude blends, some of which are imported. The system adapts, but not instantly. Hour 24 to 48. This is where structural interdependence becomes visible. Supermarkets still have food, but product diversity narrows. Imported fruits, specialty goods, and certain packaged products start thinning from shelves. Fuel distribution remains stable nationally, but regional pricing becomes volatile. Futures markets reflect uncertainty about refinery throughput and export balances. The pharmaceutical sector becomes a critical concern. The United States produces many finished drugs domestically, but a large portion of active pharmaceutical ingredients are sourced globally. Inventory exists, but supply chain managers begin contingency planning. Technology companies feel pressure. Hardware manufacturing depends heavily on global inputs. Cloud infrastructure continues running. Servers are domestic, but replacement hardware cycles become uncertain. Financially, the U.S. has an advantage. The dollar's role in global trade settlement gives American institutions significant liquidity. Treasury markets remain the global benchmark. In a crisis, capital tends to flow inward, not outward. That financial gravity buys time. Hour 48 to 72. At this stage, resilience depends on sector. Energy remains relatively stable. The United States has strategic petroleum reserves. Domestic natural gas production is strong. Electricity grids operate independently of foreign supply in most regions. Food security remains intact in caloric terms. The U.S. is a net agricultural exporter, but supply chains are optimized for efficiency, not isolation. Distribution networks experience bottlenecks if trucking inputs or imported packaging materials slow. Manufacturing output begins pausing in sectors reliant on foreign components. Automotive plants could idle. Electronics assembly slows. Industrial equipment production faces shortages of precision parts. Ports are quiet. Container terminals process what is already docked, but inbound schedules show gaps. Politically, messaging intensifies. Federal agencies coordinate with industry. The Department of Energy, Transportation, and Homeland Security increase communication. Markets remain volatile but functional. The military is not immediately affected. Defense supply chains carry strategic stockpiles. However, long-term sustainment of advanced systems relies on globalized industrial inputs. By 72 hours, the United States is not collapsing, but it is adapting, and that distinction matters. The country's size, resource base, and financial system provide meaningful insulation. Compared to many nations, America has a high degree of structural capacity. Yet the modern U.S. economy is not self-contained. It is deeply embedded in global networks. Energy markets price globally, even when production is domestic. Agriculture depends on international input flows. Semiconductor supply chains are internationally distributed. Pharmaceutical ingredients cross borders before becoming finished drugs. Consumer goods are assembled through multi-country processes. Financial markets settle through interconnected counterparties. The United States could survive 72 hours of isolation. It could likely survive far longer. But survive does not mean unchanged. Efficiency would fall, prices would adjust, production would slow in specific sectors, market volatility would persist, policy intervention would increase. And that reveals the real lesson. Modern power is not about whether a country can endure isolation. It is about how costly that isolation becomes. The United States benefits enormously from global integration. It exports energy, food, capital, technology, and financial services. It imports specialized goods, components, and consumer products that make its economy more efficient and more competitive. Interdependence is not weakness. It is leverage when managed carefully. The 72-hour test is not a prediction. It is a stress model. It shows that even the world's largest economy operates inside systems it does not fully control alone. In the first hours, markets react. In the second day, supply chains adjust. By the third day, structural dependencies become visible. America has buffers. It has scale. It has domestic capacity. But it is not an island. And in a world defined by networks, the strength of a nation is measured not just by what it produces, but by how well it manages the systems it depends on. What to watch next? As geopolitical fragmentation accelerates, countries are quietly stress testing their own resilience, and the results will shape the next phase of global power. The strength of a nation isn't measured only by what it produces, but by how well it manages the systems it depends on. If you want to understand how global systems shape power, resilience, and risk, subscribe to Systems Watch.